Funds for the construction of this airborne colossus were collected from all over the world, as if it were not for an airplane, but for a temple of a celestial deity. It was meant to become a giant in Stalin's sky, to overshadow everything human and technological that had come before it. It was not just an aircraft, but the embodiment of the delusion of omnipotence. What is his mission? To immortalize. Not the first cosmonaut, not an outstanding scientist, but an anniversary. Yes, the 40th literary anniversary of the proletarian propagandist Maxim Gorky.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps the channel grow and motivates me to create even more amazing videos for you.
And at the same time, to put all the capitalists in their place by showing the world, look how great, ironclad, and invincible we, the USSR, are. The An-T-20 is the largest airplane in the world, an airborne citadel, a steel propaganda monster. In propaganda films, ordinary fighter planes looked like mosquitoes next to a hippopotamus when compared to it. As if to say, look, bourgeois ideas are just as small and insignificant as these planes, and just as helpless in the face of the Soviet dream. USSR, 1932. The young but already very ambitious Soviet state is celebrating another victory. Workers driven hard at the machines and boilers have enthusiastically completed the first Stalinist 5-year plan, even ahead of schedule. The newspapers are squealing, the radio is hysterically reporting, we are ahead of the entire world. Rapid development, economic miracles, breakthrough after breakthrough. There was just one nuance, all of this was built on blood. While the newspapers were painting plans of an industrial paradise, peasants were being stripped of their last land, driven into collective farms, broken by force, turned into powerless slaves, and at the same time, dekulakization, a convenient word for robbery, was laying the foundations for what was already looming behind them, the Holodomor. Not only concrete, but also bones were laid as the foundation for the USSR's mega projects. Millions of Gulag prisoners hauled the construction of the future on their backs, literally leaving their bodies there. So for the Kremlin, it was no longer enough to simply build on bones. They also needed to astonish the world with something celestial. And that's when this idea emerges, to create the largest airplane on the planet and name it after a person who had timely supported the regime, Maxim Gorky, who had just celebrated 40 years of creative service to the party. Imagine the largest airplane in the world. And it wasn't meant for passengers, nor for soldiers, nor for researchers. It was an agitational aircraft. An airborne platform, a steel megaphone of ideology, meant to carry Soviet propaganda into the skies. That was the very mission assigned to this airplane by party order. It wasn't Tupolev who came up with this idea, he merely carried it out. To make the people feel involved in the miracle, funds for the plane were collected as if for a temple. Everyone gave what they could. The word of the party would ascend to the skies. One newspaper wrote with wild pride, workers of Soviet culture, Soviet writers, journalists, inventors, and all fighters of the cultural front must take part in the creation of the airplane. To sum up, everyone who wrote well and kept silent even better took part in its creation. Because this project was not technical but ideological, the airplane was supposed to become a flying temple of propaganda. A full-fledged printing press, radio station, cinema, telegraph, loudspeakers, all of this was meant to fly and broadcast straight from the sky, like the word of God, or rather, the word of the party. According to the plan, the agitators were supposed to produce leaflets right in the sky and drop them onto the heads of the collective farmers who at that very moment were bending over in the fields for a day's labor. And here comes the surprise. From the sky descends a smiling Stalin with a Mayday greeting. What happiness it must be to work in the mud, and on top of that, to be ideologically sprinkled from above. You can only sigh. Now that's real care. When the call went out, the money started pouring in. 6 million rubles, a colossal sum. And already in 1934, the airplane with the resounding name An-T-20 Maxim Gorky was ready. On May 17th, just 2 weeks after that pompous flight, the giant takes to the sky again. They need to film something even better, even more beautiful. To emphasize the scale, they add a few fighter jets. And so, one of those pilots decides to do a loop-the-loop right next to the Gorky. The fighter jet can't handle the maneuver and crashes straight into the engine. The Ant-20 breaks apart like a cardboard prop. The wings were burning, the fuselage was collapsing, pieces of bodies and metal rained down to the ground. The outskirts of Moscow were covered with the charred remains of 49 victims, among them the best engineers, journalists, designers, pilots, the very creators of that same pathos who, just a few days earlier, had been celebrated by the Flying Editorial Office. People whose names were meant to be celebrated in newspapers, not mentioned in disaster reports. Thus ended the short but loud story of the flying palace of Soviet propaganda.